Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Doug Noll. He speaks about and teaches people how to solve difficult, intractable, and highly emotional problems. He was a business and commercial trial lawyer for 22 years, which I didn't know until I read your bio, which is pretty cool. And before turning to leadership, development, problem solving, and peacemaking, which is to me the best one, peacemaking. Doug, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Will. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. So, Doug, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What was that journey like? You know, you were a trial lawyer, and now you became a coach. We're going to talk about your books. What was that journey like to transition into, I guess you could say, personal development? Would that be accurate?
So to make a really long story short, I took up the martial arts in the mid '80s,
Right.
and I was awarded my second degree black belt in right around my 40th birthday in 1990. And at that time, my teacher told me, go learn Tai Chi, because I was an arrogant asshole. And he wanted me to, he thought that Tai Chi would be really good for me. And so I started studying Tai Chi as a martial art. And Tai Chi has two really interesting paradoxes. The first paradox is the softer you are, the stronger you are. And the second paradox is the more vulnerable you are, the more powerful you are. Soft to be strong, vulnerable to be powerful. And in the beginning, these paradoxes made no sense to me, but they finally seeped into my soul until one day, in the late '90s, I was in a courtroom cross-examining somebody, and the thought came to me, what the heck am I doing in here? And after that trial, I had a vacation plan, a river trip, whitewater river trip. And so I spent 10 days on the Snake River in central Idaho in my boat, on my raft, thinking about how many people I'd really served as a trial lawyer. And I could only really count 5 people that I thought I'd really helped. Yeah. And I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to go another 30 years and maybe only help 10 or 15 people. But I didn't know what I was going to do. Right. So when I came back home, I live in Central California. I was driving down out of the mountains to my law office, and I heard a public service announcement for a new master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies. And that caught my attention. Right. I ended up enrolling, and for 3 years, I was a full-time master's degree student again, more graduate school. I was teaching at our local law school, and I was also the chair of the board of trustees, and I was a full-time trial lawyer. And when that was all over with, my partners and I had long discussions about what my practice would look like. And they definitely did not want me to stop trying cases because I was the second largest earner in the firm. And they were all kind of making a lot of money off me. And finally in 2000, one of my partners came to me and said, you're not getting any more paychecks until you stop this peacemaking crap. And I said that was on a Friday. And I came back in on Monday and I said I quit. And I left that following Friday and started my peacemaking practice on November 1st, 2000, leaving $10 million on the table. I just walked away from everything. And that's how it started.
Wow. So you had a couple of aha moments there. You know, you were in a trial, then, you know, you're saying to yourself, what am I doing here? You go rafting for 10 days and they give you an ultimatum and you said, the hell with that. You know, I think a lot of people, and you know this, Doug, they don't take that leap, you know, because they're afraid that they're going to take a chance. So going into this, right, the peacemaking process and obviously about relationships, what was it that drew you to that? You know, you say you helped about 3 to 5 people as a trial lawyer, but did you see that you could help more by becoming a so-called peacemaker?
Yeah, well, I help more people in a day today than I did in 22 years as a trial lawyer.
Wow. Wow.
So
yeah, talk more about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, okay. So what happened was so I became a mediator and a peacemaker, and I was mediating litigated disputes and non-litigated disputes. And I started getting called into these very high conflict cases where emotions were really strong. And the one thing I didn't have was a way to calm people down. All we had was this whole active listening stuff that doesn't work. Everybody knows it doesn't work. But that's what people teach because there was nothing else out there.
Yeah.
And I had an epiphany in 2005 about listening to emotions and feelings rather than listening to words. And it was absolutely miraculous what happened. People calmed down. In the mediation where I discovered this, I had a divorced couple who would have killed each other if there had been knives on the table. 4 hours later, they walked out holding hands to have lunch in a reconciliation. I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. And all I had them do is listen to each other's emotions, not the words they were saying.
Right.
And then 2 years later, a brain scanning study came out of UCLA that showed in neuroscience why this works so well. And it shows exactly what happens in the brain. And what happens is when you listen to and reflect somebody's emotions, the emotional centers of the brain are inhibited and the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex is activated. And the whole thing takes about 90 seconds. And you can calm any angry person literally in 90 to 120 seconds. And once you learn this skill, you'll never have a fight or argument again in your life.
Yeah, and that's
never escalate.
Yeah, and that's the topic of our discussion: stopping fights and arguments in a relationship. Okay, so let's say a man and a woman, they're together, but let's say the woman's more argumentative and the guy's more softer.
Mhm.
How does that work? I mean, especially if the guy is I'm not saying afraid of confrontation, but that's not his bag.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's what you have to pay attention to. You got to realize that when you're dealing with a woman, I'm assuming you've got mostly a male audience.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm getting more females, but
it doesn't matter whether it's male or female. Let's just say you're dating somebody and they tend to be argumentative and out there. So what I train people to do is to think about what are the emotions that are causing this person to be argumentative.
Right.
So it could be anger, resentment, frustration, fear, anxiety, worry, concern. It could be shame, imposter syndrome. It could be some kind of deep-seated grief that's unresolved, or it could be really deep. It could be a feeling of abandonment, rejection, betrayal, feeling unloved, unlovable, and worthless. And they use argumentation as a way of pushing people away. So what you do is instead of responding to the argumentation, you simply tell them what they're feeling. So, well, if I were dating a woman and she was getting a little argumentative with you, I said, you're really frustrated. You feel invisible. No one's listening to you. And you feel like you're completely disrespected and unsupported and unappreciated. And you're a little anxious. And you feel shame because you don't think you deserve to be where you're at. And you're really sad because you don't feel the personal connection that you really crave. And you feel abandoned and all alone and unloved and unlovable.
I mean, that might trigger her to, like, the waterworks might come out because
that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the waterworks coming out. She's going to start to cry. Because
so basically it's just listening and then just saying those words, hey, I'm here for you, let it
don't
out.
even say that. Don't even say I'm here for you. No I statements.
Gotcha. Okay.
Always use statements. We're trying to validate this woman or man. If you're a woman, you can do this to a man, or if you're a same-sex couple with your partner.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is validate them from their frame of reference. So you never, ever use an I statement.
No I statement. Okay.
Always a you statement.
A use. Okay. So in an argument, let's say in a situation where, you got a couple and something triggers one or the other, you're basically, like you said, you say, hey, I understand your frustration. I understand. No?
Nope. No
Don't
I
even
statement.
say that word. No, okay.
You're frustrated.
You're frustrated. Gotcha. Never use I. Okay. Never use no I.
Never use an I statement.
Okay. And talk more about that. Why not? Is it because now you make it about yourself, or
the moment you start talking about I, me, now the agenda is on you, and you're no longer listening to the speaker from the speaker's frame of reference. And so the speaker feels disrespected and not heard and not listened to.
Okay. No, talk more about that. That's pretty fascinating, because everybody always says, I understand your frustration. I want to help you.
So how do you feel? Well, when somebody says that to you, oh, Will, I totally get it. I really feel your frustration.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that. You're right. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that.
Everybody hates it.
Yeah.
And yet everybody does it because they don't know any better. What's the difference between this? Oh, Will, I really understand that you're pissed off and angry, and I can really see that you're frustrated and annoyed, versus, Will, man, you are really pissed off. You are just angry beyond belief. You're frustrated, and you don't feel heard or listened to or respected. And the
Yeah.
whole thing's just really pissing you off. Which one works better?
Yeah, no, because it's the focus is now on them, not on us,
Exactly
not
right.
on me, not on I, but on them.
That's right. Don't use I statements.
Okay, wow. So, okay, so if you have now one or the other, right? One that's argumentative and one that's a little softer, more, I guess, sympathetic. Now, but if you have two that clashes,
Well,
how do you work that out when you have two people that are both willing to argue and not even listen to each other? Yeah, go
one of
ahead.
them has to be willing to go step into what I call the Buddha bubble.
Okay, and what's
And the
that?
Buddha bubble, you imagine that you're encased in this bubble of
Yeah.
energy. And in that and in that bubble, nothing can penetrate. No matter what the other person says, it cannot penetrate and hurt you.
Mm,
You're totally protected. And
okay,
you are going to be non-reactive, non-critical, and non-judgmental.
right.
And all you're going to do is reflect the emotions of that angry, argumentative person
So somebody has to be the,
until they
I hate
calm
to say
down.
the bigger person, but someone has to take that lead and say,
You have to be trained in this.
okay,
These skills are counterintuitive and counter-normative. You would never figure this out on your own. And there are very few people that I've met who are able to take the simple, the secret, ignore the words, read the emotions and reflect the emotions. That's all it is. It's a little more challenging than it appears because we have so many social barriers and psychological barriers around listening to other people's feelings. But when you
are
learn,
we making time for that though? Sorry, Doug, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are we making time for that other person for us to at least listen to them and be
yeah,
sympathetic?
but
Yeah,
we're going to create space and time, and the whole process is going to be so much faster than having an argument.
okay,
Listen, one and done in 90 seconds, and it's over with, and
that's
everybody's calm and happy,
right.
as
Just by,
opposed to an argument that can go on for minutes or hours, and then everybody's hurt and nobody talks to each other, and you got to then you have to rebuild intimacy and trust, which is really hard to do.
once
Imagine
you
being
lose
able
that,
to
okay.
not have that and build more intimacy and trust, even make it even the relationship even stronger, because you took the time, you knew how to listen.
And that's the biggest thing is always listening.
Listen, it's a foundational skill of life.
Do
If
you
you're on
need,
a first date, if you're
yeah,
on a first date with somebody and you want to make a good impression, listen.
I agree with
Their
you there.
it's what people crave. Human beings crave being listened to more than anything else. They crave it more than money, more than sex, more than food, more than anything. They
Yeah.
crave connection. And there is no connection in our superficial world today. And if you can provide that connection right out of the gate, good things are going to happen in that, between you and the person you're dating, if you want that to happen.
You know, it's funny that you say that, Doug. And we're talking with Doug Noll. And today's topic it's about stopping fights and arguments in a relationship. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she's young. She's in the 20s. And one of the things she talks about is this about communication and now how some like guys that she meet, they'll just go rambling on about themselves and not ask her any questions to get to know her.
Right.
So talk more about that because now that could, fuel some type of resentment eventually because if the woman likes the guy, but then all of a sudden he just talks about himself.
That's a big mistake.
Yeah, so go ahead, please.
So why do people talk about themselves? Because they are afraid. Number one, they don't know anything better.
Right.
Two, they're afraid to become intimate because intimacy is scary because they have their own defenses, their own vulnerabilities, their own fears of being close with somebody. And so they don't feel like they're in a safe space emotionally.
Yeah.
So if I just talk about myself, I don't have to let you into my space, and I don't have to create emotional safety. And it's just a way of soothing my own anxiety around the potential of being in this relationship. And this is all unconscious. Nobody teaches us otherwise. And so we just engage in this process. Yeah. And if we flipped it and just took time to listen to her emotions and feelings, first date, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Mm.
And then as she's talking, you would say, wow, you were really happy about that, or you were amazed, and you felt really, really satisfied about that, or that pissed you off. You got frustrated. Instead of saying, or yeah, that happened to me too, just reflect her emotions. What are her feelings? And she's
That
going to
is
have
so true. That is so true.
multiple emotions come up when she tells her story about herself. And some are going to be good emotions or positive, and some are going to be negative. And you
Right.
just reflect what comes up, one word at a time. Oh, man, that really pissed you off. Yeah, that
Got it.
really, you really got excited about that. Yeah, you were really proud of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, people love talking about themselves and all that. I get it, and asking questions, listening. Um, this is to me, this is fascinating. I want to talk more about going back a little bit the Buddha bubble.
Hmm.
Talk more about that. Like, how was that concept, or how did you like learn about that? Because that's pretty interesting, and I want to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, my wife and I developed it.
Okay.
Um, we never fight or argue. We really don't. We're both very skilled at this.
Yeah.
And so, but it was early in our relationship. We were both working through our own personal issues.
Yeah.
And so we would tend to get to places where we wanted to have a hard conversation, but we didn't know how to do it. And so we talked about that. And I said, I think it was me that came up with the idea. It might have been her. I don't. One of us did, and but I do recall telling her, "I need you to. Can you be in the Buddha bubble for me?" And she said, "What does that mean?" I said, "I need you to be in a place where you're non-reactive, non-critical, and non-judgmental, and you're going to just reflect my emotional feelings and just ignore what I say, and just reflect my emotions. Do you think you can do that for me?" And she said, "Sure." And so she did,
Wow.
and it worked. And then when we were done, she said, "Well, why don't you try it? Why don't you step into the Buddha bubble?" And so she talked to me about some stuff that was bugging her. And I just ignored what she said, focused on her emotions, and was non-judgmental, non-critical, and non-reactive. And it worked like a charm. And we said, okay, the great tool. We're going to remember this one.
So
Buddha
it's,
bubble.
so it's always focusing on the emotions, not the. So I mean, are we putting the words?
We're ignoring the words.
We're ignoring the words. So it's more about the emotions, the anger, the frustrated, whatever.
Exactly.
You having a rough day, you're frustrated. Everything is about them. And so, Doug, what are so then? I don't know if you could do this, but are there a couple of steps that you could start? We'll talk about your coaching program and your book in a minute. Is there a step that, let's say, a man or a woman can use if the other person is more argumentative or they're frustrated? Is there like one or two steps that you could start? Is there like maybe a breathing exercise, or you just, like you said, just back off, listen, and
Well, what in my training and my coaching, first of all, what I do is I teach people that emotions come in layers. And so we
okay,
learn how to structure emotions from the least invasive to the most invasive.
yeah,
And there's 7 layers of emotions that I've developed. And so a lot of the coaching is learning about those layers, learning about what emotions are, where they come from, how they originate in our brain body,
mm,
and understanding the science behind emotion as we
yeah,
understand it now. Then we learn how to structure the data, because for most people, emotions are unstructured data. They have feelings, but they don't know what to do with them. And then many people can't even articulate what they're feeling.
right,
And that's a condition called adult normative alexithymia, the inability to name your own emotions. Very common. So we start fixing that by teaching people. I teach people and drilling them on this emotional database until they really have it down. Then the next step is to go out and practice it in low risk social situations. So my favorite laboratory is Starbucks. So you go into Starbucks, you give the barista your credit card, takes your order, and you say to him or her, "Wow, you look really happy today." And
gotcha.
odds are they're going to be happy, because Starbucks hires happy people in the morning, right?
Right.
Watch what happens. You're having a great day. You're really happy. And watch what happens. What will happen is you'll get a big smile, and the person will say, "Yeah, I'm having and they'll go off, because for the first time, a customer has actually validated them and listened them into existence. And you repeat this process every time you go into Starbucks. You always say you're having a great day, and watch. You're really happy today. Then you go to the supermarket and you do the same thing with a checkout clerk. Only with a checkout clerk, you'd say something like, wow, you're really excited because your shift is almost over. And it's going to be one of three things. One, the shift is almost over, and they'll say, yeah, I'm really excited. Or two, I'm about halfway through. I got 4 more hours. Or nope, I just started my shift, and then you say, oh, so you're feeling the pain of 8 more hours here, right? And yeah. And so you go that way.
Right.
Third place you practice is in a restaurant. Your restaurant server comes up, says, I'm Doug, I'm serving you tonight, and you say, hey, Doug. And depending on what you pick up, you say, you look really happy to be here. Or
Right.
you look a little frustrated and anxious. And you'll get the best service you've ever had in your life.
I
And that's
like
how you
that.
practice. And in all these situations, you're doing it in a very safe place with a perfect stranger. So that if you screw up, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
And it gives you an opportunity to put on your lab coat and watch how people react to this. And after you've done this for a couple of weeks, you can then move to friends, start playing around with it with friends. And then you can start moving it to work with coworkers.
Yeah.
And then after about 6 to 8 weeks of practice, and in my coaching, we take 6 to 8 weeks. We meet once a week for an hour. The first session is 2 or 3 hours. Then we meet every week for an hour practicing this, and you go out and practice. And then usually by the 8 weeks, you've got it. And that's when you can start bringing it into your more intimate relationship, your dating relationships, or if you've got a significant other into that.
Yeah.
And if you're married or you've got kids, you start doing it with kids.
Right.
And that's it. It doesn't take long to master, as long as you've got somebody to guide you along the way, because there are some pitfalls, and it can be intimidating to tell people what they're feeling in the beginning, and you need some help to overcome that.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I wanted to touch on something that I did forget to mention, right? So you're in a privacy session with your partner, and like I said, one is argumentative. You listen, you go, hey, you did this, you're going through this, whatever, what you said earlier. But if you're in a public setting where someone tends to doesn't care who's around, how does that work though? If you're in a public setting, same thing, really.
Works.
Okay.
What you learn is discernment. How deep do you go in a public setting?
Okay.
And how, I'll stay in the top 3 layers, which would be fear. No, it'll be anger, fear, and I'm sorry, it'll be anger, disrespect, and fear. Top 3
Right.
layers.
Okay.
And so I'll stay there in public. I won't go any deeper because it gets more invasive as you go deeper.
Yeah.
But I've got all kinds of stories of where I've been giving a talk, and somebody gets in my face because everything I'm telling them violates everything they think that they know about listening. And you're angry, you're frustrated, you feel disrespected, you don't feel heard, you feel invisible.
Yeah.
And you're anxious and worried about what I'm saying. It causes you some fear and is a little terrifying. I say, yeah.
Yeah.
Audience applause.
Just like that. Yeah. That's great. I mean, yeah, go ahead, Doug. You gonna say something else?
So it requires, it's like riding a bicycle. Kind of hard to learn how to ride a bicycle by yourself. You kind of need some help. Training wheels, and then training wheels come off, and mom or dad hold you on the bike where you kind of get your balance going right for a day or two, and then all of a sudden you've got it and you're gone.
Yeah.
And that's the same process.
Yeah, again, because it's always, depending on the person, some person can, come home and get into the argument, or they don't care if they're in public and all that. So, okay. So it definitely works in both scenarios. First of all, Doug, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to people on dating. Before I let you go, talk more about your book.
My 4th book, De-escalate.
Yeah.
The book is called De-escalate: How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less. Simon & Schuster. It's in 5 languages. You pick it up on Amazon. Last time I looked, it was $13 or $14.
Yeah.
It's also an Audible, so you can pick up the narrated version, narrated by my wife. So, and some people, most people really love listening to her.
Yeah.
So you got that. Then you can go to my website, which is Doug Noll, DOUGNOLL.com. And from my website, you can get into my courses. I have online courses that you can take, including De-escalate and advanced emotional competency, which takes de-escalation even further and teaches you all these skills to become emotionally competent, no matter how intense the situation is. And then people can hire me as a coach and a trainer to either work with them individually or I do work with couples that need help. And I do workshops, virtual and in-person workshops, teaching, for example, executive leadership teams how to lead, teaching school administrators how to listen, teaching. I'm working with a group now. It's the North Carolina Lutheran Synod in northern North Carolina. I'm teaching their people that are working with their homeless project. So they're learning how to de-escalate homeless people and listen to homeless people into existence. Really powerful work. And so those are the kinds of things that you can hire me to do. And of course I do keynote speeches and that kind of thing too. So DougNoll.com is the way to get at me, and you can email me through the website.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that on the show notes. Anything else you want to promote?
No, I'll just say this, Will. I learned this skill in 2005. I developed it in 2005. The more I work with this skill, the more I'm convinced that if we had people listening like this across our country, the problems that we have today would go away. We would not have the America that we have today if people learned how to listen in this way. We may not all agree with each other on a lot of issues, but we would respect each other. And we would be able to listen to and validate each other, despite the fact that we might have sharp political or policy differences.
Yeah.
And we would be able to negate the political leaders of our country who would rather divide us and cause us to be fearful of each other for their own power, position, and privilege than anything else. They're not helping us. They're hurting us. And when they drive wedges between us for their own benefit, that's wrong. And the only way we're going to correct it is if we as a people come together and learn how to listen to each other. And this is the skill that we're going to use for doing that.
No, I love that. I like I said, I'll definitely put that on the show notes. And tell us that website one more time where people can find you.
DougNoll.com. DOUGNOLL.com. You can Google me, Doug Noll or Douglas Noll. I'm all over the place. Pretty easy to find.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'll definitely put it on the show notes. Well, Doug, first of all, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Will. Glad to be here.
Yep, my pleasure. Bye-bye.